My name is Sophia Bell, and I live in Austin, Texas. Most people think of Austin as this picturesque southern town with white porches, oak trees dripping with moss, and neighbors who know your dog's name before they know yours. That may be true on the surface, but trust me, it's also a place where secrets are stored tighter than church vaults, and where betrayal can sit next to you at Sunday brunch, smiling over biscuits and sweet tea. I was born here, raised here. And now, at 31, I've learned this town can either make you or burn you alive in polite silence. I chose not to let it make me. I decided long ago I'd make myself, and I'd do it on my own terms. That's why the moment I hit $700,000 in savings, I stood in my living room, looked my mother dead in the eye, and told her. It was meant to be a celebration. Not for her, for me. I wanted to look her in the face, the woman who once told me I'd never be anything without a man, and say, look, I did this without anyone, no husband, no inheritance. Just grit, blood, and rage. She nodded slowly when I told her, didn't say much. Just gave me that tight-lipped smile she's used since I was 15. Good for you, Sophia, she said. Then she asked where I kept it. I didn't lie, not completely. I told her I kept it in a safe in my walk-in closet. And then the next morning she was gone. So was the safe. But it gets better. She left a note, written in smudged red lipstick on the back of a Comfort & notepad. I invested too much money in you, so it's my right to take it back. I sat on the edge of my bed, rereading that line over and over. There were lipstick smears around the edge, like she'd been chewing the corner of the paper while writing it. I imagine she thought it was some kind of justice, poetic even, like I owed her my success because she raised me. It was supposed to make me angry, and it did. But not because of the money. No, she hadn't taken that. She'd taken the decoy, the cheap, boxy safe I'd set up years ago as a distraction. Inside it, she'd find a few moth-eaten pearls I'd picked up at a pawn shop, $300 in crumpled 20s. And a few fake passports I'd created for a side hustle that never made it off the ground. She'd think she hit the jackpot. Meanwhile, the real safe, a biometric titanium-grade unit imported from Belgium, sat hidden behind a sliding panel in my bedroom wall. That safe held the real $700,000. I called it my Europe Dream Fund, but it was more than that. It was my escape route. My revenge fuel, my future built on my own damn back. You might ask, how does a woman like me get that kind of money? Let's just say I learned early how to make systems work for me. I invested aggressively, flipped houses, and ran a private consulting gig helping the ultra-wealthy hide their bad decisions behind perfect press kits. My clients never asked questions. They paid in cash. I kept records, the kind that ensured they wouldn't screw me over. Blackmail is ugly, yes. But it's also deeply effective. So no, my anger wasn't about the fake safe. It was about the insult. Diane Bell, my own mother, had reduced my entire life's work to some kind of emotional debt she felt owed. As if raising me gave her the right to rob me. She always had a gift for justifying her cruelty with a smile. When I was 10, she slapped me across the mouth for spilling juice on her silk blouse and said, "You should learn now. Mistakes cost people something." I learned, all right. And now she was going to learn too. And here's the truth, she wasn't always like this. Diane used to be sharp, driven, maybe even warm, once. She was a high school teacher with a spine of iron and a brain that scared most men off. Then came the second divorce. And after that, Mikkel, a tall, blonde parasite from Denmark who worked in shady crypto and wore silk scarves like a Bond villain who hadn't earned the title. Diane changed after Mikkel. Became obsessed with image, status, money. She started calling me her retirement plan during wine nights, laughed when she said it, but she meant it. She saw me as her investment portfolio. All her sacrifices, she used to say, had a price. And now she thought she was cashing in. Too bad, she bet on the wrong damn safe. So I didn't call the police. That would have been too easy. Letting her get caught for stealing $300 and some expired IDs, that wouldn't satisfy me. I wanted her to think she won. I wanted her to buy champagne and fake pearls and pose in front of a rented sports car. I wanted her to tell Mikkel she'd pulled off the con of her life. I wanted her to open that safe in front of him and see the look on his face when he realized she'd stolen garbage. And then, when her smug little fantasy burst like a bubble, I'd make my move. This wasn't just about money. This was about reprogramming the hierarchy. She had always looked down at me like I was a failed project, a defective mirror of her own ego. Well, now I was the one holding the cards. I got up from the bed, took her note, and slid it into the real safe beside my cash stacks. A reminder, a trophy. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up my list. Names, contacts, a fixer in Boston, a hacker in Atlanta, a friend in Brussels who owed me a favor. I'd kept them quiet, dormant, just in case. Looks like just in case was now. As I dialed the first number, I smiled. Not the kind of smile people wear in public, but the kind that lives deep in your bones. The kind you earn. This was war. And I never start wars I don't intend to win. Flying into New York with a fake name stitched onto my passport felt more satisfying than it probably should have. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't running. I just liked the idea of being someone else while preparing to burn two people's lives to the ground. The passport read, Emilia Woods, British citizen. London-born, Cambridge-educated, Euro-rich. It was all bullshit, of course, but customs didn't blink. I smiled sweetly, nodded with a faux British accent, and slipped right through. No one suspects a polished woman with clean nails and dead eyes. The moment I touched down at JFK, I switched to silent mode. My phone, my real one, went into a drawer in the airport lounge. I powered on the burner. No contacts, no social media, no digital footprints. Only numbers that mattered. Aiden, my hacker. Margot, the legal fixer from Brussels. And Vince, the bartender from Soho who liked to trade secrets for cash and cocaine. I met Vince that night in a dive bar that smelled like stale rum and regret. He worked the late shift, pouring cheap vodka into expensive glasses and listening to Wall Street brothers talk about how they almost bought Tesla at $40. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. You're early, he said, voice low. Time is money, Vince, and I'm sitting on both. He took the envelope I slid across the bar, $6,000, fresh bills, bundled tight, and nodded. Mikkel and your mom were here 3 nights ago, rented a black Mustang convertible. Talked loud, drank louder. Kept name-dropping places in Europe like they already owned them. Did they mention where they were headed? I asked, trying to keep the steel out of my voice. Vince leaned in. Copenhagen. Mikkel said he had a guy waiting there to help him clean the money. Your mom. She looked high on the power. Kept saying this was her second chance at the life she was owed. Sounded like she was reciting a damn movie script. I smirked. That sounded like Diane, always the victim in her own mind. Always owed, never responsible. She used to say that every dollar I made was a return on her emotional investment. I used to laugh it off. But now that bitterness had calcified into something sharp and cold. She wasn't just my mother. She was my enemy. I left the bar without another word and went straight to the Apex, a glass and gold penthouse I had booked for 5 nights. It was 25 stories up, complete with a liquor cart full of top-shelf scotch and a view of the city that reminded me just how far above them I already was. That night I sat on the couch, sipping Glenlivet, legs crossed, watching the city below while planning how to destroy my mother and that Danish leech she clung to. Killing them wasn't enough. No, that would be too merciful. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to drown in the ruins of their illusion. I wired $15,000 to Romain, a fixer in Boston who had built more new identities than the US government could count. His job was simple: find every European alias that Mikkel or Diane had ever used. Dig into property records and get me locations, titles, shell corporations. Romain had no questions, just results. While Romain worked, I reached out to Aiden. Aiden was a digital ghost, half genius, half lunatic. I met him in DC. 2 years ago, when I helped a lobbyist cover up a financial scandal, Aiden handled the data scrub. He owed me. Aiden, I said on the call, I want them bled out digitally. Freeze their accounts, track the wire transfers, get into anything they think is secure. I want their crypto wallets exposed, their bank histories opened like a damn autopsy. Done, he replied without hesitation. Anything else? Yes, I said. Send a digital footprint to Interpol linking them to international laundering operations. Make it look sloppy, like amateurs playing with fire. Just enough to flag them, not arrest, not yet. I want them paranoid first. Aiden chuckled. You always did prefer the long burn. I smiled. You know me. 2 days later, Ramon sent the file. A 40-page PDF full of names, addresses, tax records, and wire transfers. Diane and Mikkel had already purchased a townhouse in Sterbro, a high-end Copenhagen neighborhood, under the name Marion Kingsley and Mads Thorne. Real original. They were funneling stolen funds through a fake business listed as Borealis Exchange Limited,
a shell company registered in Brussels.
I forwarded the information to Margot, my Belgian legal contact. She was an ice-cold barrister with a soft spot for high-end revenge. I told her I'd triple her usual rate if she could start laying legal traps across Denmark and Belgium, liens, tax probes, and anonymous reports of corporate fraud. I wanted Diane and Mikkel to feel the net tightening, even before it touched them. That night, I poured another drink and opened my leather notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote, Objectives 1. Freeze assets. 2. Leak intel to Interpol. 3. Set legal dogs on Borealis Exchange. 4. Appear in Copenhagen without warning. My hands were steady, no tremors, no second guessing. I had 5 days left in Manhattan. I spent them refining the plan, buying surveillance gear, and prepping my new identity. I even tried on a few different looks, brunette with long curls, short platinum bob, even a fire red wig. I settled on classic, dark hair in a low bun, olive coat, leather gloves. A woman who knew what she was doing and wasn't afraid to watch something burn. By the 5th day, Aiden confirmed that the townhouse was being watched, cameras installed, communications tapped. They had no idea. They were still living in their fantasy, thinking they'd outsmarted me, escaped justice, claimed their golden future. They were wrong. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was restoration. I wasn't reclaiming stolen money. I was tearing down the myth of Diane Bell, the mother, the martyr, the manipulator. And Mikkel? He was just collateral. A disposable little footnote in the story of how one woman rebuilt herself out of fire and blood. And when I landed in Denmark, they wouldn't see me coming. But they'd damn sure remember me when I left. Copenhagen was colder than I remembered, not just in temperature, but in spirit. The last time I'd been here, I was 20, traveling on a student visa with barely enough euros to cover street food and metro rides. That trip had been funded by my own scholarship earnings. While my mother used the birthday money my grandmother left me for Botox sessions in Miami, I remember sitting alone on a bench outside Tivoli Gardens back then, watching happy families take photos while mine was cracking at the seams. Now, I'd returned not as a daughter, not as a tourist, but as a predator. The townhouse they had bought in Sterbro looked like something out of an overpriced design catalog. 3 stories. Clean white stone, steel-framed windows, and all the soulless minimalism you'd expect from 2 people pretending to have taste. Through surveillance footage Aiden had forwarded, I knew the layout well: kitchen with marble countertops, faux Scandinavian furniture that cost thousands but looked like plywood, and a wine cellar stocked with labels they couldn't even pronounce. They were faking wealth and status, but I had the receipts to burn it all down. I didn't break in. I didn't have to. I invited myself to brunch. Disguised in a rich chestnut wig, olive coat, and dark lipstick, I walked into the bistro down the street from their home. It was one of those places that served $25 eggs on mismatched plates and poured coffee like it was wine. I'd made the reservation under the name Isabelle Duval, a fictional American investor looking to funnel money into high-growth offshore ventures. I knew my mother would take the bait. She always did when flattery was involved. When they arrived, they didn't recognize me. Diane, in her new silk scarf and faux European accent, looked right past me. Mikkel looked bored, tapping at his phone until I mentioned a $2 million equity opportunity in London. Then his eyes lit up like the greedy rat he was. They sat down. I watched them perform. She went on and on about how they'd launched Borealis Exchange Limited, with quiet backing from unnamed hedge funds. He bragged about crypto portfolios and real estate plots just outside Antwerp. They were trying so hard to appear legitimate, as if speaking fast and dressing in neutrals could erase the rot underneath. I listened for a full hour, taking notes I'd never use, sipping black coffee like I was studying prey through a scope. Then I leaned in. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I just asked softly, did the safe feel heavy when you stole it? Or just empty like your conscience? Silence cracked the table like a whip. My mother's face turned gray, not white, not pale, but ashen, like something inside her had died in that moment. Her fork slipped from her hand and clattered to the plate. Mikkel stared at me, confused, before it registered. Then he stood, fists clenched, nostrils flaring, that arrogant Danish temper boiling over. I stood, slow and steady, like I had all the time in the world, because I did. I tossed $280 on the table in cash, no tip, not for them. As I turned and walked away, Mikkel stumbled after me into the icy Copenhagen street. You bitch, he growled, grabbing my arm. I spun toward him fast, faster than he expected, and jabbed my knee straight into his groin. He crumpled with a choked gasp. Touch me again, I hissed, and I'll take more than your money. I left him there on the sidewalk, wheezing in pain, just as Aiden's final message pinged on my burner phone. All assets transferred. Accounts frozen. Trust locked. The townhouse? Seized. The Danish bank accounts. Flagged and legally bound under tax fraud investigations. The fake stock operation? Reported to Interpol anonymously, of course, via Diane Bell, using a fake IP routed through Belgium. They weren't just broke. They were being hunted. When I returned to their street that night, I didn't sneak in. I parked outside, engine running, and watched as 2 Danish financial officers knocked on the door. My mother answered in a robe, confused and tired, her hair undone for the first time since I'd arrived. Mikkel hovered behind her, pale and pacing. They hadn't even packed. They still thought they were safe. I watched them panic as the officers handed them an official envelope filled with audit notices, property liens, and temporary asset seizures. I'd orchestrated every detail. The property was no longer theirs. It belonged to a holding company under my control, purchased with their own stolen money 5 hours before the flag was triggered. They couldn't run. Their passports were flagged, their accounts empty. The trust now sat comfortably under my name, in a Swiss vault they'd never be able to touch. And still, it wasn't enough, so I walked up to the door. Calm, cold, deliberate. Diane opened it and gasped, stepping back like she'd seen a ghost. Sophia, she whispered, voice cracking like old wood. No, I said, stepping into the foyer, uninvited. Not your daughter, just the woman you tried to rob. Mikkel tried to speak. I shut him down with a look. You're just a souvenir in her pathetic little climb. She'd throw you under the bus the moment the fire gets too close, and that moment's coming. My mother stood shaking, hands out like she could fix this with maternal apology. You think I owed you, I said, staring at her. For giving birth to me, for raising me. But you never raised me. You resented me. You didn't build me. You beat me down, and I built myself back up. Every dollar in that real safe. I earned, and now I'm taking it back. With interest. Diane started crying. Actual tears, but they didn't move me. They never had. Goodbye, Mother, I said flatly. As I stepped back into the cold, I turned once more. Next time you want to play investor, pick someone who isn't already writing your obituary. And with that I left them in the ruins of their little European fantasy. Not broke, not betrayed. But beaten, by the one person they never thought would rise high enough to look down on them. When I stepped back onto Austin soil, I wasn't the same woman who had left. I was sharper now, not just in mind, but in posture, in presence. I didn't rush through customs. I didn't hide. I walked with purpose in my heels, like I owned the airport, the city, the sky above it, because in many ways, I did. I returned with $820,000 in wired accounts, the original $700,000, plus $120,000 skimmed off the digital bones of Diane and Mikkel's crumbling empire. I had pulled their wealth out from under them like a magician with a grudge and left nothing behind but frostbitten failure. But I wasn't done. You don't just destroy your past and move on, not if you want the satisfaction to last. No, I needed to bury that version of me. The one they underestimated, the one they molded in silence and guilt. And to do that, I needed to build something bigger than them, something no one could ever touch. I bought a house the next morning. A modern farmhouse on 10 acres of private land just outside of Austin, $950,000, paid in full. I didn't even blink as I wired the funds. It sat nestled between rows of wild pine and oak, wrapped in solitude and silence. White shutters. Black steel roof. A porch that stretched around the entire structure like a protective embrace, the kind my mother never gave me. The realtors couldn't believe it. No financing? They asked. No debt, I replied. Just receipts. I built a new safe. Not because I needed it, but because symbols matter. This one wasn't hidden. It sat right in the center of my study. Bold, cold, unashamed. A titanium cube from Denmark. Ironic, I know. Inside it, only one thing. Diane's note. I invested too much money in you, so it's my right to take it back. I laminated it, framed it, and locked it inside. I open the safe sometimes just to laugh. To remind myself how far I've come. That note is the tombstone of the person I used to be, the daughter, the appeaser, the one who made excuses for cruelty because the source of it called itself family. But revenge. Revenge is never a single act. It's a campaign, a slow suffocation. A week after settling back in, I sent out a press tip, anonymously, of course. It detailed American investor Diane Bell's connection to an ongoing European money laundering probe. I added Mikkel's name, real and fake, and attached a photo of their fake Belgian ID cards, courtesy of Aiden's digital finesse. The Austin Chronicle ran the headline 2 days later. Local woman and Danish associate arrested in Belgium in financial fraud scandal. I sipped wine on my porch while the news broke. I watched neighbors whisper. Saw old friends from high school share the story on Facebook like it was just gossip, not the final bullet in a legacy already riddled with holes. I never answered the phone when people called. I wanted them to wonder. Wanted them to put the pieces together and ask themselves, could Sophia really have done all that? Yes, I could. And I did. You see, people think revenge is about rage. But it's not. Rage is hot, wild, reckless. Revenge is cold, methodical, dressed in elegance and legal paperwork. It's not an explosion. It's erosion. Slow, silent, unstoppable. Mikkel and Diane? Last I heard, they were arrested in Belgium while trying to open a private account in Liège under new identities. The IDs were traced, flagged, and forwarded directly to a Europol task force that had been tipped off 2 weeks prior. By me, naturally. They were detained without bail, held for fraud, tax evasion, and use of falsified documents. I made sure they got only one call. It wasn't to me. I know Diane called an old friend in North Carolina, someone who still believed she was a misunderstood artist with bad luck. But that friend didn't answer. Because I'd already warned her, nicely, subtly, with just enough evidence to make it clear that helping Diane meant risking her own assets. Cowards fold quickly when their wallets are on the line. Mikkel? He tried to contact a Belgian lawyer he used years ago. That lawyer's license had conveniently been suspended for ethics violations. I had nothing to do with it, of course, not directly. Let them rot. They won't stay locked up forever. But when they get out, they'll find no home, no money, no trust. Their names will be digital poison. And Diane? Well, she'd be nothing more than a cautionary tale on a Austin gossip page, forgotten by the very society she tried so hard to impress. As for me, I started writing again, not novels, manifestos. Quiet essays under pseudonyms about power, betrayal, and the price of silence. They're getting traction. One was recently published in a major New York magazine. I titled it, The Cost of Being Raised by Narcissists. I didn't need to use her name. The story was unmistakably hers and mine. I've built something here. A life with no strings, no shame, and no leash. I host dinner parties, invite powerful women who know how to smile with teeth and set fire to glass ceilings behind the scenes. We drink wine, talk strategy, and laugh like wolves. Sometimes, late at night, I sit out on the porch and think about that little girl in Tivoli Gardens, sitting alone on a bench while her mother spent her future on vanity. I think about the slap, the silence, the stolen money. And then I look around. At the house, the land, the freedom. And I smile. My name is Sophia Bell, and this is how I rewrote my family legacy in dollars, not blood, in actions, not apologies, in justice, not forgiveness, and every cent, every cold-blooded step was worth it.